As the holiday season draws to a close, we could look at something cheery and pleasant. All the wonderful things wrestlers have done this year, all the great causes they have supported, all the friends we've made along the way. But no, that's not what you sickos want, is it? It's the dark and grimy, mean and angry, you're stuffed full of turkey and sweets, and you've been forced to sit through one too many of the same conversations with your oh-so-sweet grandma who only has 4 stories to tell, 3 of which are about trees. You need something angry to cleanse that palate of yours. So here we are, ready to serve all your feisty and fiery needs. Let's work and work ourselves into a shoot, brother. I'm Tempest hailing from partsFUNknown, and these are 7 wrestling promos that led to real-life fights. But before we get on with this list, make sure, of course, that you like this video, subscribe, and enable notifications to always on so you never miss a fun list just like it, and check out the Christmas edition of Survival Series. It's very good. Number 7, the belt swap. Once upon a time, Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair were the best of friends. They held up 4 fingers together and had great matches, and everyone was happy. Then Charlotte dropped a belt on the floor, and as we all know, there's no coming back from that. So the women's title belt swap segment lives in infamy as one of the most awkward bits of television WWE has ever produced, where Becky and Charlotte were meant to trade their trinkets because WWE thought it was a good idea to color code their championships, but not a good enough idea to make sure that there was a rule about that sort of thing. So this televised swap meet took place, and the plan was for Becky to hold both titles, proclaim herself Becky 2 belts, then toss one aside as Charlotte demanded mediator Sonya Deville to pick it up. Alright, sounds good so far, but then Charlotte had a bee in her bonnet about this for some reason, and instead dropped her title on the floor on purpose, derailing the entire segment. Becky was clearly none too pleased, and by the time everyone got backstage, tempers were flaring, and the 2 horsewomen had to be separated before things could cross the line into getting physical. They managed to have a good match off of it at Survivor Series 2021 though, so at the very least something positive came out of this one. Number 6, Taz and Sabu. It turns out that not showing up to a big wrestling show that you're booked on is a good way to piss off your peers, as we will continue to see on this list. In this case, Sabu was one half of the ECW Tag Team Champions alongside Taz, and was booked to defend his title on an ECW show. However, Sabu had double booked himself, and was set to travel to Japan where he would be earning considerably more money than if he stayed for the ECW show. Somewhat unsurprisingly, he went to Japan. This led to Paul Heyman letting the fans in attendance know that Sabu had abandoned them, and over a year of Taz shoot promos calling out Sabu. Sabu would eventually return to ECW, but by then the heat between the former tag champions had reached an unworkable level. Taz because Sabu had left him high and dry, and Sabu because Taz was talking shit. While this didn't lead to a fist fight outside the ring like other entries to come on this list, it did cause their eventual match at the first ever ECW pay-per-view, Barely Legal, to become basically a shoot fight at times. Look at the shots in this match. The lads were just fighting, resulting in Sabu busting his nose open. It is a wonder how the match went 18 minutes and had a finish, because at times it sure seemed like they weren't gonna get there. Like many others on this list, Sabu and Taz are friends today. Number 5, Samoa Joe's Scott Hall promo. Scott Hall's personal battles have been very public and very highly publicized, dating back to his days in WCW. So when he returned to TNA Wrestling in 2007 and immediately no-showed their next pay-per-view, Turning Point, it unfortunately seemed like more of the same. However, the response to this incident from Samoa Joe, one of the men who was scheduled to face Scott Hall at the show, caused more than a bit of a stir with Hall's friends within the company, namely Kevin Nash. Joe was sent to the ring to address Scott Hall's absence and began with an impassioned tirade about how people like Jay Lethal and the Motor City Machine Guns busted their asses for TNA, but then quickly turned his attention to Scott Hall, saying he could kiss his ass, and called him a punk. Joe then introduced his tag partner, Eric Young, and said when Eric is an old man, he will still be ready to fight, unlike Scott Hall. Nash did not take kindly to this and confronted Joe backstage, asking if what he said had been given to him by a writer or if it was a shoot. Joe told him it was a shoot, and Nash struck Joe in the face twice before Joe backed down. Joe ultimately apologized to Nash in front of the TNA locker room for disrespecting Hall, and all seems to be well and good between them today. A happy ending. Number 4, Sammy Guevara's fat piece of shit promo. Thank God we have moved on from the cursed time that was AEW from August to November 2022. The time where it seemed as if the company couldn't go 2 weeks without some sort of backstage fight breaking out. A backstage fight that on more than one occasion would feature Sammy Guevara. The first such incident came in the build-up to the proposed Sammy Guevara versus Eddie Kingston match at All Out. In a promo that did not make air, Sammy called Eddie a fat piece of shit, something that Eddie took exception to as he he felt it undermined their match by just making him look bad for no greater reason. Eddie approached Sammy and expressed these concerns, and when Sammy reacted dismissively, Eddie shoved Sammy's face and was promptly suspended. Eddie wound up taking responsibility for his actions, and while they didn't end up having their match at All Out, it did happen at Grand Slam, where AEW made the genius decision to have Eddie lose by DQ in New York, which honestly is the greatest sin of this whole ordeal. Number 3, Scott Steiner's DDP sex change promo. When you consider the state of WCW in the year 2000, it is a wonder how there weren't more incidents like this one. Scott Steiner, ever one to have a short fuse, did not get along well with Diamond Dallas Page back in the day before this saga even began. So imagine his rage when DDP's wife Kimberly alleged that Sonny, Steiner's friend, had left drugs backstage. The story goes that upon hearing this, Steiner chased Kimberly out of the building and she was never seen on WCW programming again. However, things were brought in front of the camera later that night when WCW champion Scott Steiner took to the mic on the December 18th Nitro. Steiner on the mic is unpredictable at the best of times, but in this promo, which was meant to be Steiner calling out WCW CEO Ric Flair to give him a new challenger, Steiner went off script and delivered the line, "I got an idea, why don't you try to convince Diamond Dallas Page to get a sex change so he has the balls to come out here and face me?" This line, shockingly, did not sit well with DDP, who waited for Steiner to get backstage. Now, there are a number of different accounts of what happened next, but the constant is that the two men had a hell of a brawl. Regardless of whether or not the tales of Steiner hitting a shoot suplex on DDP or DDP bloodying Steiner up are true, they absolutely had a good old-fashioned Donnybrook, and while that would be curtains for a lot of people's friendships, Steiner and Page were able to patch themselves and their friendship up. Number 2, Hangman Page's workers' rights promo. God, watching this back has me feeling like Matthew McConaughey trapped behind a bookshelf. While it didn't seem like much at the time, Hangman Page making a crack about CM Punk not being down for workers' rights in AEW was the beginning of the end for Punk's time in the promotion. Why did this particular line lead to the nuclear response that it did? Well, because Hangman Page was in a faction with Colt Cabana, and then CM Punk arrived in AEW, and very soon after, Colt Cabana wasn't around anymore. Now, CM Punk will scream through bites of a muffin that he did not personally have anything to do with Cabana's absence from AEW television, but when Hangman Page said that Punk wasn't about workers' rights, he took that as an illusion that he had been the cause of Cabana's disappearance. Strangely enough, this is the only entry on this list where the person delivering the promo didn't end up being involved in the ensuing fight, as CM Punk took this promo, spent several months getting madder and madder about it, and then unleashed all of his fury in one go at All Out 2022, directing his rage at Hangman, Colt Cabana, and the Elite, the latter of which went to go respond to Punk's comments in his locker room, and then they all got into one big fight. There was a dog, a steel bit of guy. For some reason, Christopher Daniels caught heat with Punk coming out of it. We've talked about all of these things enough times, so if you'll allow me, I'm gonna get back to building my time machine to go back and stop this promo from ever happening. And number 1, Shawn Michaels' Sunny Days promo. I mean, this was the original Brawl Out, really, wasn't it? Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart's disdain for one another is somehow still more documented than Brawl Out is at this point, with countless factors at play contributing to why 90s dickhead Shawn Michaels and 90s stubborn Bret Hart's relationship had completely deteriorated by 1997. While Montreal is by far the most significant, infamous, and talked about moment between the two faces of WWE's New Generation era, their fight in Hartford was the most heated encounter between the two men themselves. But to get to the point where Bret and Shawn were going to throw punches at one another, first, Shawn had to finally cross a line that Bret could not accept. That line was delivered in a promo on the Titantron on Raw, insinuating that Bret Hart had been sleeping with WWE diva Sunny, stating that Bret Hart had been having some, quote, sunny days. Things didn't boil over until Bret had gone home to find out that his family had seen the show, with everyone from Bret's wife Julie to his dad Stu asking him if something was going on with Sunny. Now irate, Bret arrived in Hartford and had one of the most historically significant fistfights in wrestling history with Shawn Michaels, resulting in Bret ripping out a chunk of Shawn Michaels' hair that for at least some period of time was kept by Jim Cornette in his collection of wrestling things. A normal man he is. Shawn didn't take kindly to this and promptly quit the company, only to be talked into returning by Vince shortly thereafter. And there you have it. You are all now allowed to go back to having your leftover sweets from your stockings and take a positive mind and soul into 2024, where hopefully everyone can just get along. And that's our list. Please make sure that you like this video, subscribe, and check out this clip from the Christmas episode of Survival Series.
And that was was 22.
That's not how you spell Christmas, you idiot.
Yep.
That doesn't go there. That's obviously the corner bit.
Okay.